My name is Anya Sharma, and at 32 years old, I had built a life that was, by my family's standards, a complete and utter failure. While they lived in a world of eight-figure homes and philanthropic galas, my world was a tidy, two-bedroom apartment near Fort Meade, Maryland. While their name was engraved on museum wings and university libraries, my name was stitched onto the simple fabric of an Army combat uniform. They called my ROTC scholarship a handout, my military service quaint but ultimately pointless act of charity work. I was the family's strange, stubborn project, the one who chose a life of service over a life of splendor. I never expected that the very career they scorned, the quiet, unseen work I did in the shadows of national security, would one day become the single most valuable asset the Sharma family possessed. I never imagined that my name, the one they saw as a footnote, would become the only thing standing between my brother and a $10 billion defense contract, giving me the kind of leverage, the kind of absolute power over their world that they could never have conceived of. The irony was so potent, so perfectly symmetrical, it felt like a twist of fate written just for me. Before I dive into the full story of how a single automated red flag on a government security form brought my family's gilded empire to its knees and forced them to finally see me for who I am, I'd love to know where all of you are watching from today. Let me know down in the comments. And if you've ever felt like the black sheep, the one whose choices were constantly questioned and misunderstood by the people who were supposed to support you the most, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps to know you're not alone on a journey like this. For all the new viewers here, make sure you subscribe to join this incredible community of people who understand that sometimes the greatest validation comes not from pleasing others, but from proving them wrong. Growing up a Sharma was like being born into a dynasty that had long ago forgotten how it had built its empire. The wealth was old, so old it had become an atmospheric condition, a pressure you breathed in with the meticulously filtered air of our Connecticut estate. My father, Kale Sharma, was the patriarch of this dynasty, a man whose posture seemed permanently molded by the weight of his own importance. He moved through rooms as if he owned the very molecules in them. My mother, Lena, was his perfect counterpart, a woman of breathtaking elegance and social grace, whose love felt as curated and conditional as the art on our walls. And then there was Rohan, my older brother by 3 years. Rohan was not just a son. He was the heir apparent, the golden child, the sun around which the entire Sharma solar system revolved. He was born with the same confident gravity as my father, and from his earliest days, he was groomed to take over, to expand, to conquer. I, on the other hand, was the family's quiet, confounding satellite, orbiting in a path they couldn't quite chart. I was academic, where Rohan was charismatic, observant, where he was declarative. While Rohan was learning to charm investors at cocktail parties, he was far too young to be attending. I was in my room, taking apart old radios and teaching myself how to put them back together. The difference in our paths, and our parents' perception of them, was starkly illustrated by the great 8th grade science fair debacle. Rohan's project was a flashy, professionally designed model of a futuristic city, complete with fiber optic lights and a pre-written presentation. My father had hired a team of architectural interns to build it for him, a fact that was an open secret. He presented it with a slick confidence that won him the first place ribbon. My project was a functional encryption program I had coded myself on a clunky second-hand computer I'd bought with saved allowance money. I stumbled through my presentation, nervous and awkward, and won second place. That night, at dinner, the champagne was uncorked for Rohan. My father clapped him on the back, praising his vision and leadership. When I timidly held up my own silver ribbon, my mother smiled, a thin, distracted smile. "Oh, that's lovely, dear," she'd said, her eyes already back on Rohan. "It's so nice you have your little hobbies." Hobbies, that was what my passion was to them. It was the first time I felt the deep, gutting sting of their dismissal, The realization that effort and authenticity meant nothing in a world that only valued the appearance of success. This dynamic only intensified as we grew older. Rohan's path was a superhighway paved with my father's money and connections. He went to Wharton naturally, and his summers were spent in internships that were little more than networking opportunities on a yacht. My path was one I had to carve out myself. I was a voracious reader, a straight-A student, but my ambition was a quiet, internal fire, not the roaring bonfire of my brothers. When the time came for college applications, the unspoken assumption was that I would attend a prestigious Ivy League school. My tuition a casual rounding error in the family's quarterly finances. I was accepted into Georgetown's School of Foreign Service, a place I desperately wanted to go. But the thought of it, the idea of 4 more years of being financially tethered to them, of having my education be just another jewel in their crown, made my stomach turn. I didn't want my degree to be something they bought. I wanted it to be something I earned. It was during a late-night research session in the school library that I found my escape hatch. It was a simple brochure, tucked away on a bulletin board. Its bold letters, stark, against the ivy-covered backdrop of the other pamphlets. Leadership, scholarship, service. It was for the Army Reserve Officers Training Corps. It offered a full, 4-year scholarship to the university of my choice, in exchange for a period of service as an officer after graduation. It was a meritocracy. They didn't care who my father was. They cared about my physical fitness scores, my grades, my leadership potential. It was independence, handed to me on a platter of discipline and hard work. It was perfect. When I announced my decision, the reaction was not just disapproval, it was a detonation. We were in the grand sitting room, a space so large and ornate, it felt more like a museum than a place for a family to talk. My father, who had been swirling a brandy snifter, set it down with a sharp click that echoed in the cavernous silence. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "No daughter of mine is joining the military." "It's a scholarship, Dad," I argued, my voice trembling but determined. "A full scholarship to Georgetown." "We are not destitute, Anya," he shot back, rising to his feet. "We do not accept charity. That scholarship is for some poor, unfortunate child who has no other options. It is not for a Sharma. You will be taking it from someone who actually needs it." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He, a man who had leveraged every unearned advantage his entire life, was accusing me of taking something I didn't deserve. My mother, Lena, rushed to his side, her face pale with horror. "Anya, darling, think of the optics," she pleaded, her voice a frantic whisper. "The army? It's so unseemly. What will people say? What kind of life is that for a young woman of your breeding?" Rohan, lounging on a velvet chaise, just smirked. He hadn't said a word, just watched the show with an air of amused detachment. "Let her go, Mom," he said, finally. "It's just her poverty tourism phase. She'll get tired of playing soldier in a few months and come crawling back." Poverty tourism. The words hung in the air, sharp and poisonous. In that moment, something inside me broke. The desperate, little girl need for their approval fractured and fell away, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I looked at their 3 faces, my father's rigid anger, my mother's horrified vanity, my brother's casual cruelty, and I realized they would never see me. They couldn't. They were looking at me through a lens so distorted by wealth and privilege that I was rendered invisible. "I'm not playing," I said, my voice suddenly steady and clear, "and I won't be crawling back." I turned and walked out of the room, out of the house, and out of the life they had planned for me. The weight of their disapproval was immense, but the lightness of my newfound freedom was even greater. I was finally on my own path, and I didn't care if I had to walk it alone. College was a revelation. While my old high school friends were navigating sorority rushes and talking about their parents' summer homes, I was learning to field strip a rifle and read a topographical map. My alarm went off at 0500 for physical training, a brutal but exhilarating ritual that left me breathless and alive. The ROTC program was a crucible. It stripped away your name, your background, and rebuilt you as part of a team. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Anya Sharma, the industrialist's daughter. I was Cadet Sharma, and my worth was measured in my performance, my integrity, and my commitment to the people standing next to me. I found a new family there, a band of brothers and sisters, forged in shared hardship and a common purpose. I remember bringing one of them, a fellow cadet named Ben, home for Thanksgiving during our sophomore year. Ben was from a small town in Iowa, the son of a corn farmer, and he was one of the most decent, hard-working people I had ever met. The moment we stepped into my family's home, I saw it through his eyes. The cavernous marble foyer, the silent staff moving like ghosts, the sheer oppressive scale of the wealth. Ben was polite, almost reverently so, but he was visibly intimidated. At the dinner table, my father engaged him in a conversation that was less a dialogue and more an interrogation. "So Benjamin," he began, "what does a young man from a farming background hope to gain from a military career? A steady paycheck, I suppose." Ben, to his credit, answered calmly, "A chance to serve, sir, and to lead." My father chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. Laudable, but service doesn't pay the mortgage on a place like this. He gestured vaguely at the room around them. Rohan joined in, asking Ben if he'd ever even been on an airplane before joining the program. The questions were coated in a thin veneer of politeness, but the condescension was thick and suffocating. I watched Ben's easy smile tighten, his shoulders tense up. He was being treated like a specimen from another, lesser world. Later that night, as I walked him to the guest suite that was larger than his entire family's home, he turned to me. "Your family is a lot," he said, the understatement hanging in the air. "I don't know how you do it, Anya. It's like they're speaking a different language." He was right, and I was becoming fluent in a new one. A language of acronyms and field manuals, of loyalty and duty. The gulf between my two worlds had become a chasm. Phone calls home were exercises in futility. They were filled with long, awkward silences, punctuated by my mother's breathless accounts of a recent gala or my father's booming pronouncements on the stock market. They would ask perfunctory questions about my life. "Are you eating well, dear? Are they keeping you busy?" When I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, they attended the ceremony. My father shook my hand, his grip firm, but his eyes distant. My mother hugged me stiffly, careful not to wrinkle her silk dress against my newly pressed uniform. They took the requisite photos for the family album, my stern, uniformed figure, an odd blotch in a sea of smiling faces in designer clothes. Then they left, whisking Rohan off to a celebratory dinner for his latest startup, which had just secured its first round of venture funding. I stood alone on the parade ground, the weight of my new gold bars on my shoulders, feeling both heavy and liberating. My first duty station was Fort Huachuca, Arizona, the home of Army intelligence. The landscape was a world away from the lush green of Connecticut. It was stark, beautiful, and unforgiving. The sun beat down on the desert floor, and the mountains on the horizon seemed to hold ancient secrets. I loved it. I was assigned to a signals intelligence unit, and my knack for languages and patterns, the things my family had called hobbies, were now valuable skills. I learned to listen to the world's whispers, to find meaning in the static, to piece together fragments of information into a coherent picture that could save lives. My career progressed steadily, quietly. I was good at my job because I was meticulous, patient, and I understood the value of anonymity. In the world of intelligence is a world of shadows. Success is silence. Your victories are never celebrated on the front page. They are buried in classified after-action reports. I did a tour in Afghanistan, not on the front lines, but in a secure windowless room known as a SIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. I spent 12 hours a day staring at screens, listening through headphones, my mind 1,000 miles away, tracking threats and protecting soldiers on patrol. I sent a brief, vague email home, saying I was being deployed. The response I got from my mother was an automated out-of-office reply, followed 3 weeks later by a cheerful message filled with photos from a charity auction in Monaco. It didn't even mention my deployment. The sting was familiar, a dull ache I had learned to live with. After a few years, I was reassigned to Fort Meade in Maryland, the epicenter of the nation's intelligence apparatus. I was now a captain, a company commander, responsible for over 100 soldiers. My life was full. It had purpose, but to my family, it was a blank page. On my rare visits home, I was met with the same benign neglect, the same well-meaning but utterly clueless questions. I remember one Christmas dinner, sitting at a table laden with food prepared by a private chef, surrounded by my parents' wealthy friends. The conversation was a symphony of brand names and vacation spots. A woman with diamonds sparkling at her throat turned to me with a pitying smile. "Anya dear," she cooed. "Lena tells us you're still in the army. That's so brave of you. Is the food in the mess hall at all edible these days?" Rohan, ever the magnanimous prince, chimed in. "Don't worry, Anya. When you finally decide to join the real world, I'll have a spot for you at Sharma Dynamics. We can always use someone for corporate social responsibility. A little charity work to make the company look good." The table chuckled politely. I felt a hot flush of anger, but I swallowed it down. I had learned that engaging was pointless. It was like trying to explain color to a person born blind. I just smiled, a small, tight smile. "Thank you for the offer, Rohan," I said, my voice even. "But I'm quite fulfilled where I am." I spent the rest of the dinner in silence, an island of olive drab, in a sea of cashmere and silk. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, not because I was alone, but because I was fundamentally, irrevocably unknown to the people who were supposed to know me best. That night, unable to sleep in the palatial guest room, I called the one person who I knew would understand. Colonel Marcus Thorne, my former battalion commander, was now retired, but had remained a mentor and a friend. He was a gruff, no-nonsense man who had seen it all. I told him about the dinner, the casual insults, the feeling of being an alien in my own family. He listened patiently, the silence on his end of the line, a comforting presence. When I finished, he let out a low chuckle. "Sharma," he said, his voice raspy, "you're looking at this all wrong. They're peacocks. All they know is how to display their feathers. You're an owl. You operate in the dark. You see things they can't see, and you're a hell of a lot more dangerous. Your strength, Captain, isn't in what you show them. It's in what you don't. Let them have their dinner parties. You have a mission. Don't you ever forget that." His words were a balm on a raw wound. He was right. I had a mission. My life had a meaning they would never grasp. I hung up the phone and looked out the window, at the perfectly manicured lawns, the sleeping, opulent houses. I felt a sense of pity for them. They were trapped in a gilded cage of their own making, while I, in my simple, disciplined life, was truly free. I didn't need their understanding. I didn't need their approval. I had my own, and I believed, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was all I would ever need. While my life unfolded in the quiet, classified corridors of Fort Meade, my brother's life was a supernova. Sharma Dynamics, the company he had started, with a hefty seed investment from our father, had become a titan in the defense technology sector. Rohan had a genius for marketing and a knack for hiring brilliant engineers who could turn his grandiose visions into reality. Their specialty was a frighteningly advanced synthesis of drone surveillance and predictive AI. They were building the next generation of warfare technology, and the Pentagon was taking notice. The crown jewel of their ambition was a project codenamed the Ares Initiative. It was a massive, multi-billion-dollar contract to overhaul the military's entire battlefield intelligence network, integrating thousands of drones, sensors, and data streams into a single AI-driven platform. Sharma Dynamics was the front-runner, the golden child of the defense contracting world, just as Rohan had been the golden child of our family. The contract was worth an estimated $10 billion over 5 years. It would not just make our already wealthy family astronomically richer. It would cement the Sharma name as a permanent fixture in the military-industrial complex. The news of their imminent victory was all over the financial press. My parents were ecstatic, planning a celebration that would make a royal wedding look like a potluck dinner. I watched from a distance, a silent observer, to the grand spectacle of my brother's success. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID read, Rohan Sharma. I stared at it for a moment, a knot of suspicion tightening in my stomach. Rohan never called me. We communicated through perfunctory holiday texts and the occasional, awkward family email chain. A direct call from him could only mean one of two things: a family emergency, or he wanted something. I let it ring one more time before answering, steeling myself. Anya, he said, his voice a strange mix of forced nonchalance and high-strung tension. Hey, how are you? I'm fine, Rohan, I replied, my tone flat. What's going on? What? Nothing. Can't a guy just call his sister to catch up? He said, a feeble attempt at a joke falling flat. I remained silent, letting the awkwardness hang in the air. I knew this game. He was circling his point, trying to soften me up. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. Okay, fine, he sighed, the false cheer vanishing. Look, there's a situation, a problem with the Ares contract. I felt a cold prickle of interest. A problem? I read in the Wall Street Journal, you were a shoo-in. He let out a short, frustrated breath. We are. It's a snag. A stupid, bureaucratic snag. It's about you, Anya. I sat down on the edge of my neatly made bed. Me? What do I have to do with your contract? It's the security clearance aspect, he said, the words tumbling out in a rush now. The final due diligence. Every key principal of the company has to undergo an extensive background check, an SF-86. It's incredibly detailed. They look at everything, including close family connections. He paused, and I could hear the sound of him pacing in his office. The Department of Defense's security agency. They put a hold on the entire deal. They flagged a major security concern. And that concern is, I prompted, though a dawning incredulous suspicion was already forming in my mind. You, he said. The words small and weak. Your name came up, because of the nature of your work. It's so classified, so deep, that the system automatically red-flagged you. They've designated you a person of interest in relation to the contract. I couldn't help it. A laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp, bitter, and full of a decade's worth of irony. A person of interest, I repeated. The term absurd. Rohan, that's a term for criminal investigations. I'm a captain in the U.S. Army. I know that, he snapped, his panic making him irritable. It's not that they think you're a spy. It's a risk assessment thing. They said that because of your high-level clearances and potential exposure to foreign intelligence entities, you represent a potential vector for coercion or influence. They're worried someone could get to you, to get to me, or through me to get to the Ares technology. It's a procedural nightmare. The point is, the entire $10 billion deal is dead in the water until this is resolved, and the only way to resolve it is for you to cooperate. My mind was reeling, trying to process the sheer, exquisite absurdity of the situation. All those years of being the family disappointment, the one who chose a lesser path, all those condescending questions and pitying smiles, and now, my name, my career, the very thing they had disdained, was the single solitary linchpin, holding their glorious future together. The power dynamic of my entire life had just been inverted in the span of a single phone call. A giddy, terrifying sense of power washed over me. What do you need me to do? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. They need to interview you, he said. The DCSA, the counterintelligence people. They need you to formally attest to my character, to sign affidavits, confirming that our relationship is not a security risk, that I'm not susceptible to influence through you. You have to vouch for me, Anya. For all of us, vouch for them, vouch for their character. The character of the people who had called my life's work charity and poverty tourism. The cosmic joke was so profound, it was almost beautiful. I see, I said slowly, savoring the weight of the moment. Well, Rohan, that sounds like quite the problem you have there. I let the silence stretch, listening to the sound of his ragged breathing on the other end of the line. I'll have to think about it, I said, and before he could protest, I ended the call. I sat on my bed for a long time, the phone still in my hand. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of quiet order, felt charged with a strange, electric energy. I thought of my father's cold fury, my mother's shallow horror, my brother's cruel smirk, and I started to laugh. It was a real laugh this time, deep and cathartic. For the first time in my relationship with my family, I was the one holding all the cards. It didn't take long for the full court press to begin. The first wave was my mother. She called me that evening, her voice thick with manufactured tears. Anya darling, Rohan told me. What's happening? She began, her tone a masterclass in emotional manipulation. This is just a silly misunderstanding, and you're the only one who can fix it. Think of your brother. His entire life's work is on the line. He's been working so hard. He hasn't been sleeping. You wouldn't want to be responsible for destroying his dream, would you? When guilt didn't work, my father tried command. He called the next morning, his voice booming with paternal authority. Anya, I've spoken to our lawyers. This is a simple matter of signing a few papers and answering some questions. I have instructed my assistant to book you a first-class flight to New York. We will put you up at the plaza. You will do this, and you will do it immediately. This nonsense has gone on long enough. It's not nonsense, Dad, I said, my voice as cold as his. It's a matter of national security. I'm sure you understand that. His tone shifted. He tried a new tactic, bribery. Look, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. I know we haven't seen eye to eye on your career choices, but you're a Sharma. We take care of our own. You help Rohan with this, and I'll see to it that you're taken care of. I'll set up a trust fund for you, a substantial one, enough that you can leave this army business behind and live a comfortable life. Just name your price, Anya. Name my price. He was trying to buy my integrity, to reduce my cooperation to a simple transaction, just like every other deal he had ever made. The insult was so profound it almost took my breath away. It was the ultimate confirmation that he had never, not for 1 second, understood me, or the principles I lived by. My life isn't for sale, Dad, I said quietly, and hung up the phone. The pressure was immense. An uncle called, then a cousin, all acting as clueless go-betweens, parroting my parents' talking points. Anya, just be reasonable. Anya, it's for the family. For a brief, dark moment, I wavered. I sat in my quiet apartment, the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Maybe I was being difficult. Maybe I was letting a decade of resentment cloud my judgment. Was I really going to torpedo a $10 billion deal, a deal that could advance the nation's security, all out of personal pride? The thought was deeply unsettling. I felt small and petty, and the old, familiar feeling of being the problem, the difficult one, crept back in. Shaken, I did the only thing I could think to do. I drove to a small, quiet diner in a nearby town and called Colonel Thorne. I laid out the whole situation for him. Rohan's call, the pressure from my parents, my own internal conflict. As always, he listened without interruption. When I was done, he was silent for a long moment. Well, Major, he finally said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. It seems the owl has found herself in a position to tell the peacocks which way the wind is blowing. It's not funny, sir, I mumbled. I don't know what to do. My father tried to buy me. Of course he did, Thorne said, his voice turning serious. He's a businessman. He only knows how to transact. He sees your integrity as a commodity. The question is, what is its value? Anya, let's be clear about what the DCSA is doing. They aren't worried you're a traitor. They're doing their due diligence. A flag on a file like yours is standard procedure. Your operational history, your clearances, the very nature of your successes. It makes you a high-value target for foreign intelligence services. The government's concern is that a foreign power could use your family's financial future as leverage against you, or use your position as leverage against them. It's a tangled web. They need to be assured that the firewalls between your two worlds are absolute. He paused. This isn't about revenge, Anya. Getting revenge on people like your family is like wrestling a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it. This is about something else. You have their complete, undivided attention for the first time in your life. You hold a power over them that has nothing to do with money. It's a moral and professional power. The question you need to ask yourself is not should I help them, but what do I want to accomplish with this power? What are your terms of engagement? His words cut through my confusion like a laser. He was right. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about re-educating them. It was about forcing them, finally, to see the world from my perspective. My objective became crystal clear. It wasn't about money or revenge. It was about respect. That evening, I called Rohan back. He answered on the first ring, his voice frayed with anxiety. Anya, have you thought about it? I have, I said, my voice steady and firm. I will cooperate with the DCSA. I will do the interview and sign the necessary documents. A wave of audible relief washed through the phone. Oh, thank God, Anya. Thank you. I knew you'd. I'm not finished. I cut him off. I will do it, but on my terms. This is not a negotiation. Okay, he said slowly, warily. What are your terms? I took a deep breath. First, I want a meeting. An in-person meeting. Just you, me, Mom, and Dad. No lawyers, no assistants, just the four of us. It's okay, he agreed, a little too quickly. We can do that. Second, I continued. At this meeting, I am going to explain my life and my career to you, all of you, and you are going to sit there, and you are going to listen. No interruptions, no condescending comments, no checking your phones. You will give me your full attention. There was a longer pause this time. Anya, what is the point of? Those are the terms, Rohan. And third, and this is the most important part, at the end of that meeting, I want an apology, not for my choices. I don't need your approval for my choices. I want an apology for the years of dismissal, for the condescension, for the disrespect. I need to know that you understand why I did what I did, and that you respect it, even if you don't agree with it. I have to vouch for the character of this family to the United States government. Before I do that, I need to see some. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head as he calculated the cost. His ambition versus his pride, his future versus his family's long-held narrative. I knew I had him. The $10 billion contract was a far more powerful motivator than a lifetime of arrogance. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Fine, Anya, fine, we'll do it. Whatever you want. Good, I said. I'll arrange the time and place. Be there. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The first battle was over. The war for my own identity was about to begin. I chose the battleground with tactical precision. It was not to be my parents' opulent Connecticut estate, nor Rohan's sleek Manhattan office. Those were their territories, places where they held the psychological high ground. Instead, I booked a private conference room at the Jefferson, a quiet, stately hotel in Washington, D.C., known for its discretion and old-world gravitas. It was neutral ground, closer to my world than theirs. For my attire, I chose not a civilian suit, but my Army service uniform, the formal Class A dress uniform. The dark blue jacket, the perfectly creased trousers, the polished brass on my belt, and the colorful constellation of ribbons on my chest, each one representing a tour, a qualification, a commendation. It wasn't a costume, it was my resume, it was my armor. I arrived 15 minutes early, setting my slim leather portfolio on the polished mahogany table. I was calm, my breathing steady. Years of briefing high-ranking officers had prepared me for this. I was no longer the little girl with the second-place science fair ribbon. I was Major Anya Sharma, an officer in the United States Army, and this was my debriefing. They arrived exactly on time, a silent, tense procession. My father, Kale, looked as if he had swallowed a bottle of acid, his jaw tight, his expensive suit looking more like a straitjacket. My mother, Lena, clutched her pearl necklace, her eyes darting around the room, as if looking for an escape route. And Rohan, my brother, looked terrible. He was pale, his usually immaculate hair was slightly disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't just been losing sleep, he was a man staring into the abyss of his own failure. They took their seats opposite me, the vast table feeling like a no-man's land, between two opposing armies. I let the silence hang for a moment, letting them steep in their discomfort. Then, I began. My voice was not loud, not angry. It was the measured, precise tone of an intelligence analyst presenting a report. "Thank you for coming," I started, looking each of them in the eye. "We are here because a $10 billion contract is at risk due to a security flag connected to me. The government is concerned that my career could make our family a target, or that your business could make me one. They need to know that the relationship between us is sound. Before I can give them that assurance, I need to know it." I opened my portfolio, but I didn't look at my notes. I knew this material by heart. "It starts with the college decision," I said, my gaze fixed on my father. "You called my ROT scholarship charity. You said I was taking it from someone who actually needs it. I want to be very clear. I saw it as the only path to independence, from a family that I felt would hold my education over my head, as just another acquisition. You saw it as a step down. I saw it as the only way to build a life where my own worth wasn't tied to the family's stock portfolio. It wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of self-preservation." My father's lips thinned, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "You will listen," I said, my voice dropping a fraction of a degree colder. He fell silent, shocked into compliance. I turned my attention to my mother. "You were horrified," I said, my voice softening slightly. "You said it was unseemly, and you were worried what people would say. For my entire life, your love and approval felt tied to appearances, to how our family was perceived by your social circle. My choice to serve was something you couldn't display at a gala. It didn't fit the narrative, so it was dismissed." I saw a flicker of hurt in her eyes, the first genuine emotion I had seen on her face all day. Finally, I looked at Rohan. "And you," I said, "you called it poverty tourism. You smirked while they belittled me. You saw my choice as a joke, a phase. Because in your world, a world where everything has been handed to you, the idea of earning something through sweat and sacrifice was literally a foreign concept." Rohan flinched, as if I had struck him. He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my gaze. "For the last decade," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I have built a career in the shadows. I can't show you pictures. I can't tell you specific stories that would make you proud at a dinner party. But I can tell you this. I learned to speak 3 strategic languages. I learned to analyze complex intelligence streams, to predict and prevent attacks on our soldiers. I have commanded over 100 men and women. I have been responsible for their lives, their missions, their well-being. The work I do, the work you have so consistently disdained, is dedicated to a single purpose: in protecting the very system of commerce and freedom that allowed Sharma Dynamics to exist in the first place." I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. Every dismissive comment at Christmas dinner, every condescending question about the food in the mess hall, every joke about me playing soldier, it wasn't just an insult to me. It was an insult to every single person who wears this uniform. It was a failure to understand the meaning of service, of duty, of honor. Concepts I know are not traded on the New York Stock Exchange, but which have a value you cannot possibly comprehend. The room was utterly still. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. The United States government does not need to know if you love me, I said, my voice now quiet but intense. They need to know if I am a security risk to my brother, or if he is one to me. And for me to answer that question, for me to sign my name to a legal document attesting to the character of this family, I need to see some. I don't need your approval. I've built a life that doesn't require it, but I demand your respect, and it will begin with an apology, a real one, for the years of casual, unrelenting disrespect. A long, agonizing silence descended. My father's face was a thundercloud of conflicting emotions, rage, humiliation, and a dawning, unwelcome understanding. My mother was openly weeping now, silent tears tracking down her perfectly made-up face. It was Rohan who broke. He looked up, and his eyes were red-rimmed. The arrogance was gone, stripped away, leaving something raw and vulnerable in its place. "She's right, Dad," he whispered, his voice cracking. Then he turned his full attention to me. "I'm sorry, Anya," he said, the words heavy and real. "I was an arrogant jerk. I always was. I looked down on you, because I didn't understand you. I never even tried. I was running on the track they laid for me, and I thought it was the only track that mattered. Your path was different, and it scared me. It challenged everything I was taught to believe about what success looks like. So I made fun of it. I dismissed it. It was easier than admitting that maybe you had found something more real, more valuable than anything I was chasing. It was weak, and it was cruel, and I am so sorry." He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. His confession shattered the dam of my father's pride. Kale Sharma looked at his son, then at me. For the first time, he seemed to be truly seeing me, not his disappointing daughter, but the woman in the uniform, the officer who had just dismantled his entire worldview with a few quiet, well-aimed words. He swallowed hard, his throat working. "Your brother is right," he said, his voice raspy and strained. "We were wrong. Your mother and I, we didn't understand. We were wrong to dismiss you. We were proud of you, in our own way, but we didn't know how to show it. We were wrong." It wasn't the gushing, tearful apology of a movie scene. It was stiff, awkward, and incomplete, but it was real. It was the truth, wrung from them by the sheer, undeniable weight of the circumstances. It was a start. I took a deep, steadying breath, the air filling my lungs feeling cleaner, lighter. I looked at my broken, humbled family, and I felt not triumph, but a quiet, somber sense of closure. The war was over. "Okay," I said, my voice soft. "Okay." I reached into my portfolio, took out a pen, and laid it on the table. "I'll make the call and schedule the interview." The meeting with the agents from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency took place 2 days later, in a nondescript office building in Northern Virginia. The two agents, a man and a woman, were polite, professional, and exuded an aura of calm, implacable thoroughness. They didn't ask about my family's feelings or the dramatic confrontation in the hotel. Their questions were clinical, focused on risk mitigation. They asked about my communications with my family, the nature of my brother's business, any foreign contacts either of us might have, however innocuous. I answered each question with the same precision I had used in my family debriefing. I was calm, factual, and unwavering. I explained the strict firewalls I maintained between my professional and personal life. I detailed the evolution of my relationship with my family, framing it, not in emotional terms, but in terms of changing influence and understanding. When the time came, I signed the affidavits. I attested that Rohan Sharma was a loyal American citizen, that his character was sound, and that our familial relationship posed no threat to the security of the Ares Initiative. I was vouching for him, not just as a sister, but as an officer of the United States Army making a professional assessment. They thanked me for my time and my candor. 48 hours later, Rohan called me. The security hold had been lifted. A week after that, the news broke. Sharma Dynamics had been officially awarded the Ares Initiative contract. My brother's face was on the cover of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, hailed as the new visionary of defense technology. The Sharma family had reached the zenith of its power and influence. But something had fundamentally changed. Rohan called me the day the news was announced. There was no gloating in his voice, no hint of his old arrogance. There was just a quiet, profound sense of gravity. They approved it, he said. The official announcement came this morning. Anya, thank you. I mean it. I don't just mean for the interview. I mean, for everything. I owe you. Anything you need, anything at all, it's yours. I don't need anything, Rohan, I replied. My voice gentle. Just remember what it cost to get here. Not the money, the understanding. I will, he said. And for the first time in my life, I believed him. I promise, I will. A few weeks later, my parents invited me to their home in Connecticut for dinner. I accepted, curious to see what this new chapter would look like. The dinner was, for the first time, not a performance. It was awkward, clumsy, but it was real. They asked me questions, real questions. My father, who had once only spoken of stock prices and acquisitions, asked me about the command structure of my unit. So, as a company commander, he asked, genuinely trying to grasp it, you're directly responsible for the careers and lives of 100 soldiers. That's a significant amount of responsibility. Yes, it is, I said, simply. My mother asked about the families of my soldiers, about the support systems in place for them. They were trying, in their own fumbling way, to build a bridge across the chasm that had separated us for so long. Near the end of the evening, my father cleared his throat, a look of discomfort on his face. Anya, he began. I've spoken to my financial advisor. I want to set up that trust fund we discussed, as an apology, a gesture. The old Anya would have felt a surge of anger at his attempt to monetize his apology. But the new Anya understood. It was his language, the only one he was truly fluent in. I gave him a small, sad smile. Thank you, Dad. I appreciate the thought, more than you know, but I don't need it. I'm fine. I have my own life, my own career, and my own pension. I was setting a boundary, politely but firmly. I wasn't rejecting him. I was rejecting their old way of relating to me, a way that was based on financial dependency. My life is not a problem for you to solve with money anymore. He looked taken aback, then a slow, grudging respect dawned in his eyes. He nodded. I understand. Later that night, back in my quiet apartment at Fort Meade, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The apartment was the same. The modest furniture was the same. My life was, on the surface, unchanged. But I was different. The validation I had received wasn't the victory. The victory was in realizing I had never truly needed it. The power I held wasn't about the contract or the money. It was the power to define myself on my own terms, and to finally, after a lifetime of being misunderstood, make them see me. I looked at my uniform, hanging crisply on the back of my bedroom door. It was more than just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol of my independence, my integrity, and my strength. And it belonged to me alone. A year passed, a year of quiet, seismic shifts. I was promoted to major, my new rank insignia, pinned on my uniform by a proud and slightly teary-eyed Colonel Thorne, at a small ceremony. My family flew in for it. They stood in the back, looking slightly out of place amongst the sea of uniforms, but their presence was a statement louder than any headline. My father, a man who commanded boardrooms, watched the simple military ritual with a look of quiet awe. He shook my hand afterwards, his grip firm, and said, "Congratulations, Major Sharma." He used my rank. It was a small thing, but it meant the world. The dynamic of our family had been irrevocably altered. It was still a work in progress, often marked by awkward conversations and moments of misunderstanding. But the foundation had been reset. The condescension was gone, replaced by a cautious, burgeoning respect. Rohan and I spoke more in that year than we had in the previous decade. Our calls were no longer about family obligations, but about a shared world of responsibility. His company, now deeply enmeshed with national security, he faced complex ethical dilemmas about the use of its technology. And the first person he called for advice, his unofficial, unpaid ethics consultant, was his sister. Anya, he'd say, We have a potential issue with the AI's targeting parameters. It's technically within the contract specs, but it feels wrong. What's the view from your side of the fence? I would listen, and I would give him my honest, unvarnished perspective. As a soldier and an intelligence officer, I was no longer just his sister. I was his moral compass. The true measure of this new reality came at the formal launch event for the Ares Initiative in Washington, D.C. It was a grand affair, held in a cavernous hall, filled with a constellation of stars, four-star generals, congressmen, and titans of industry. Rohan had invited me, not as a family member, to be seated at a back table, but as his official guest of honor. He stood at the podium, a figure of immense power and success, and spoke about the future of warfare and technology. And then he paused, looking out into the crowd. This project represents the culmination of immense effort from thousands of brilliant people, he said. But I have to be honest, none of this would be possible without the guidance and integrity of one particular person. He looked directly at me. I'd like you all to meet my sister, Major Anya Sharma. A spotlight found me, and a polite ripple of applause went through the room. I stood, my heart pounding. Rohan left the podium and walked over to me, leading me toward a small group that included a decorated Air Force general. General Michelson, Rohan said, his voice ringing with a pride I had never heard from him before. I'd like you to meet my sister. Frankly, without her, this entire initiative would have never gotten off the ground. The general, a man with the weight of decades of command in his eyes, took my hand. His handshake was firm. Major Sharma, he said, his eyes twinkling. It's a pleasure to meet you in person. I've had the occasion to read your service record. It's impressive. Your family must be very proud of you. I glanced over the general's shoulder and saw my parents standing nearby. My mother was beaming, her eyes shining with tears. My father was watching me, and on his face was a smile of pure, unadulterated pride. And in that moment, I knew it was true. They finally were, but the most surprising realization was that while their pride felt good, like a warm blanket on a cold day, it was no longer the sun I needed to live. My own pride, forged in the deserts of Arizona and the windowless rooms of Fort Meade, was enough. I had found my own worth, long before they had learned how to see it. Vindication wasn't about revenge, it was about recognition, and the leverage I had been so unexpectedly granted had become a tool, not of destruction, but of reconstruction. I had used it to rebuild a bridge to my family, a new bridge, built on my own terms, with a foundation of hard-won respect. So what do you all think? Looking back, did I handle it the right way, or was I too lenient on a family that had spent so long looking down on me? I'd be fascinated to read your perspective in the comments below. This journey taught me that your value is not determined by the people who refuse to see it, and sometimes, the very thing they underestimate about you can become your greatest strength. If you've ever felt that way, or had to fight to be seen for who you truly are, please hit that like button so I know that my story resonates. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your power in the most unexpected places. Thank you so much for joining me today and for listening to my story. I truly hope it gives you strength, and I wish you all the very best on your own paths. Remember, family is not just about blood. It's about the respect and love you earn and give in return.